What's up, y'all? It's all right, cool. That's how we're gonna leave the camera. Today is the 3rd of January, 2025. This is actually the 3rd episode of the podcast I made within the same 24 hours. To me, it doesn't seem like it because I slept once the sun went up and then woke up in the afternoon. But this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 27. This episode is going to be sweet. A lot of really eye-opening things within this episode, within the physical bodies that we have. Stuff that, as we discuss, applies to everybody and always will. So here is what we're going to do, is a little bit of a rundown, as I do, of what In The Image Clothing Company is, and then we'll get into the podcast episode. So I'm going to talk about why people can't look left. Weird. I just got convicted of something, bro. So, yeah, hold on for just a second. How cool is this, dude? This is real-time reality. It's real, actually, in the reality that we haven't seen before. In the Image Clothing Company. Sup, y'all? We are in the Image Clothing Company. Back at it again. Back. Shout out to my new song, Horizons, bro. Golly. Well, gosh. You know, Goofy from the Mickey Mouse clan. I'm gonna call him a clan. Shout out to shout outs, brother. Y'all want real? Hang out with us, dog. More real than steel, you know what I'm spraying? Give me just a minute or 5. Potentially more if I need it. I'll let you know when I've completed my task for the evening. This is real, dude. You know what's so weird is in no way was I expecting to just continue with this episode. But holy cow, what if we do? Meaning, what if that's supposed to be the case? Because we're going to talk about looking left. How real can we get? Right? I'm just a kid sitting on the floor of this room talking to a little device that's filming me, looking at Frank the guitar right here, and making breakthroughs of the thing that I was going to discuss as I was like preparing to discuss it. Yeah, this is weird, but hey, I'm a human being. We're not quite toy soldiers, you know, but in certain ways. Y'all ready for reality? As in, like, just being real without holding back? Okay. If you are just listening to this episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, then you probably don't know what just happened. I'm going to paint a little picture for those of you who aren't actually watching this, and then we'll continue on. I I'm going to talk about why people can't look left. This universal patterning. We are in the Image Clothing Company. That's what we talk about is universal patternings that people get into because of external sources, clothing, shoe tying uneven, daily habits, and the way that our man-made world is structured because of the things we've created. And what I was doing, this is for those audio listeners only, because if you're watching this, you can tell what just happened. But I'm going to talk about why people can't look left. It's very, very rare for people to be able to look left anywhere near as well or pretty much at all in a way that's like actually mechanically happening in modern 2025. So I was getting ready to discuss that, and I looked over here. I set Frank the guitar right here before I started this episode. I was playing him. I just filmed a little bit of my new song that I just referenced, and I was realizing, like, man, okay, we've got our dreaded collar seam modification, right? And that's a huge thing that's causing a lot of tension on that upper right trap and up into the base of the upper right, well, I guess the lower right part of the rear of our skull, right off from the spine on the right side of the base of the skull. Yeah. So I looked over and I was like, oh, wait, hold on. I'm getting prompted to do this. And so I started using my finger like this, my thumb, and I started to massage out the base of my skull. But see what I just did for those of you watching this in visual. I raised my right shoulder because in addition to other things, a big one is that dreaded collar seam that causes people's right shoulders to pretty much always be lower than their left as long as that collar seam is on the left side, which it almost always is. So anyway, let's get into this. I'm going to do a little bit of, this is how this podcast episode's going because this is real and it's actually really cool to be able to document me doing an adjustment like that because this is something that I'm going to discuss as time goes on. And now you have seen me actually do it, like, and kind of like have a deeper breakthrough within it because I've already been doing stuff up here in that exact spot, but there's more for me to do. So as far as just furthering what I had already started. So, okay, this is In the Image Clothing Company. We address the human body. We have three sides to us. In the Image Clothing Company music, In the Image Clothing Company podcast here, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and then our main side of things, just our regular In the Image Clothing Company, where we have the anatomy of the human body be discussed, and clothing and the relationship between those two and what clothing is doing to us. So, clothing for everybody, man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age. Your pants need to sit above your hips so your hips can open and move and have all the ranges of motion that they are given, and slightly higher in the front than in the rear because that way you're going to keep your core activated as it would always naturally be because that's the center of our being unless it's altered by something external, clothing, or anything internal, but unless it's altered, that's just how it would work. And then our tops, the seams on tops of the shoulders need to sit behind that little bone that's up on our shoulders. That's actually the other end of the collarbone, which will just allow your shoulders to sit in their neutral position, and then ideally right at the very edges for those edge seams of the shoulders. Two things in addition to where clothing needs to sit that I say we have to do as prerequisites to just allow the body to be unaltered. Lacing the shoes that we wear with the technique that In the Image Clothing Company uses. You can find that anywhere you can find In the Image Clothing Company. We have the internet in 2025. Included with the technique is to tie your shoes evenly over toward the inside. And then the second prerequisite is to remove all tags from all clothing. That includes the tongues of the shoes or anywhere within the shoes because we need to be able to have our naturally activated arches in our feet, and that tag on top of the foot or on the ankle doesn't quite allow the foot to dorsiflex normally, which is when the toes come up. Now, talk about real. I'm going to move that just a little bit because what I did for those people just listening in audio only, I moved the camera a little bit because I'm talking about looking to the left within this, and this was actually off to my right more than it was off to the left. And ideally it's right in the center, but I'm going to leave it right where it is. Okay. let's get into this because there's a lot with this. So this might be long, actually. Okay. Let's start with the dreaded collar seam because that's kind of how this started. As far as up until this point, I got a little bit almost derailed noticing something. Okay, so on t-shirts, up on this upper left side, sometimes it's on the right, but it's almost always on the left, there will usually be a seam. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, that it's usually. But in like regular t-shirts, or even long sleeved, but just kind of like generic shirts, there's very, very, very commonly a seam there. And it's really imbalancing the upper traps. Those are those muscles that go up into the base of your skull and come down and connect to your shoulders that allow your shoulders to shrug. Like, right? If you don't know what that means, like your shoulders coming up closer to your ears. And those muscles support your shoulders, and those muscles aid in the ability to rotate your head and your neck. Now, we have a modification that I found, and I call it the dreaded collar seam modification. And that just allows that collar seam to be much more natural, much more pliable, much closer to how the other side that doesn't have the seam operates, meaning reacts with movement. Okay, when you're moving and that seam is stiff, it doesn't allow that part of the shirt, which if you can see this, my shoulders going up and down, it doesn't allow that to happen evenly on each side because there's just excess material where that seam is. And really what's happening is that right shoulder is pretty much always dropped, because since that seam's thicker, you're like holding it up and it just doesn't fall down evenly with the other side to allow the right side to activate. It's like that left side's the only one that's working and it's kind of stuck in a position, and the right side just can't even get up, right? The trap can't actually activate on the right side. So in order to look left, we have to get this right shoulder up. Okay, see that? Again, if you're watching this, then you can see what I'm talking about. If you're listening in audio form, you can still listen to the entire podcast and get basically what I'm saying from it, but I'm just showing things as well. So when I'm saying, like, do you see this or whatever, don't feel like you're missing out if it's just audio. But if you're looking straight, your right shoulder is lower than your left, and you try to look left with your head, you can only get so far without getting that right shoulder up even with your left. Because that right trap needs to not have so much like elongated, overly stretched tension on it to be able to look to the other side. So that's one of the big reasons people can't look left, and you'll see it. And I'm going to get into, you can see this. Again, I always say don't believe me. I'm just discussing truth, but you can see this in your life, and I'm going to discuss it. I'm going to say first, before I do, a few things that really play into this patterning within people. Okay, tying your shoes unevenly toward the right. One of our two prerequisites is to tie your shoes evenly toward the inside, over toward the inside. As I always say in the intros of just about everything that I put out under In the Image Clothing Company. But right-handed people will tie their shoes to the right if they're going to tie them to just one side, meaning doing the same knot on both feet. So that will in itself drop that whole right side of the body and not allow it to have its natural internal rotation, which is what elevates the whole right side of the body. Either side, both sides have their internal and external rotation, right? We talk about this stuff a lot. Within the Image Clothing Company videos, I've discussed all this stuff in depth, the anatomy. But tying your shoes to the right, we'll do that to the upper right trap. The dreaded collar seam, putting a drawstring around your waist and tying what you would tie as a right-handed knot, we'll also do that because that's going to put the right side lower, because when you tie a right-handed knot, you're normally crossing the left side over the right, because that way you can kind of pull it tight with your right hand when you're dominant pulling with. And we just read, at least here in the United States of America, from left to right, which is the same as that knot. So there's a lot, again, this is just universal truth. And so that's a huge reason why I love the way that this episode started, how it took like somewhere between 7 and 8 minutes, just about right around in there to actually like start, because it's just real. It's really cool. So all those things, plus anything else, well, there's many things that I could sit here and discuss. Little tiny discrepancies within clothing, the fact that oversized clothing will fall toward the side that's already a little bit lower, which will be your dominant side because of these things, and because it's the side that you reach with most commonly. And when you reach like forward, you're probably reaching to something around your waist height or even to the ground. You're reaching down more than we're reaching up. And so that side is just going to be lower for all those reasons. Plus, like I'm saying, there's a lot that I could discuss, but it's not needed for this episode of the podcast to discuss every little thing that's playing into the same patterning. I'm just discussing the patterning. So, because we'll talk about everything else, and we already have talked about most all other things within clothing that are playing into that. So, what I'm going to do now that I've discussed things that are causing us to not be able to look left, I'm going to paint a little picture for you. You're walking down a trail, like a walking trail, a hiking trail. You're on a bike even, and you're just going past somebody, and you're on the right and they're on the left of you, and you're just passing them, going opposite ways. When you look up to them to either do like a little smile or say hi or to wave, and then you look back, you ever notice you feel a little bit nervous? And it seems like it's more nervous than just because you just had an interaction with somebody you don't really know and maybe don't know at all. It seems like there's more to it, more of like a physical thing. Well, your body is if it's in this patterning, which is, it is. We live in the same man-made world. We live within the same clothing. We use the same things in the same ways as human beings. Unless you're extremely intentional and understanding about your physical body's natural function, then you're in this patterning at least to a degree. So when we look up to the left, which is something that's hard for our bodies to do, and then if we're doing something like smiling at the people and using all these muscles within the face and within the head and in the neck, and then we look back down, we have just done a mechanical position within our body that's something that's not easy for us to do within a unnatural patterning. Okay? And so it's not just because you're nervous about an interaction, but anytime you're looking left like that, that's happening. I was in the grocery store today, and just about an hour and a half ago, I was in there. And when you're at a grocery store, it's a place where you can see a lot of people. If you're at a market, you're at a produce stand, whatever, but a place where you're buying food, because that's a common place for people to just be naturally them. People just go to a store because they need to buy food, and so they come and get it at any time, dressed any way a lot of the time, ideally modest, but you know what I mean. Not like dressing up, not trying to be a certain amount of presentable. Sometimes it'll be a mother with kids or a father with kids or a whole family or single people. A grocery store is a good place to watch people's physical patternings as far as things that they mechanically can and can't do because of the positions their body has been in for X amount of time, because people are pretty authentic at grocery stores. And they're not trying to be there to be seen a certain way, at least to less of a degree than other places where we're like, it's like an event, So anyway, why I'm saying that is, yeah, because people will just go. I mean, people will roll out of bed and go to the grocery store, or people will just get off work and go to the grocery store. People will go to the grocery store first thing in the morning, or even in the middle of the night if it's open. So it's a very authentic place. That's something I've noticed. I actually worked at a grocery store for 2 years. And so, yeah, got a lot of experience with just grocery stores, really. And when you're in a grocery store, people are also reaching to get things off shelves. They are pushing carts. They're trying to like corral their children. There's a lot going on, like mechanical movements of the body type stuff. And this is cool. People are on their phones when they're walking around, either in their hand looking down at it, or they're actually holding it to their head on a phone call. People are carrying baskets or things to carry their groceries in only one hand, and you'll see which hand they're carrying it in. People will hit their shins on the cart, if that's what you have at your grocery store, is like a cart you're pushing, and it'll always just be one of their shins over the other shin. People will be getting down to the lower shelves to get something off of them, and they'll squat in ways where one of their heels will be, and it's always the same one, just about, right? The people in the patterning, always the same heel that's higher off the ground when they're like squatting low. And if they're gonna put one foot forward to get down, it's almost always the same leg. And both of those are the right one, by the way. The one that can't dorsiflex, like I was talking about with the tag on the top, because if it's being tied as like a right-handed person would tie their shoes, when you get down into a deep low squat, you can't fully dorsiflex your right foot, meaning bring your toes up, you know? And so what'll happen is that foot will be in front to compensate, and yeah. So, well, okay, so maybe the left heel will be higher off the ground in that case if your right foot's in front, because then your right foot is actually on the floor. But the point is you can't dorsiflex that right foot as much as the left. So it'll be more external. The right knee will be in front, and yeah. You'll see what people are wearing, and people are either wearing jeans that are playing into the same thing. The stitch on the rear of jeans, the right side of like what's encapsulating your whole right leg is stitched in front of the left, and that's pressing that whole side of the right side of the body forward, which is playing into not being able to dorsiflex that foot, and the right shoulder dropping. So I wanted to just give like a really good description of all that within this. I've talked about that stuff within In the Image Clothing Company videos for the main side of the company, but this is the podcast. And I'm glad that I just got into all that, because I haven't talked about specific patterning type stuff like that within the podcast to that extent. I've mentioned like tying shoes and the dreaded collar seam, but no, this is sweet. This is really sweet. This is what we are, man. Again, it's universal truth. You can see this within your own life, within the people around you, within your own physical body. So people can't look left, and so they'll always be reaching with that right arm, even though it's not in a mechanical position to be able to reach the way that the body's actually working and the muscles are activating the way that they do. It'll still be the one that gets reached with because it's external and dropped and kind of forward already. And so it's like reaching, but reaching is more of an internal reach rather than an external drop. So you can't go very far with your reach, but if you try to reach with your left hand, then your body is basically all being stabilized on that left leg. Most people can't actually stand on their right foot because it's just stuck in external rotation. And so if you try to reach with your left, then all your stability to keep you vertical is being taken away from you. And also, if you try to reach with your left, you have to look to the left to kind of counteract what your arm is doing, if you can see this in visual, right? If you can just kind of picture it in the audio form of the podcast. But yeah, no, I love that I'm saying all this within this episode, because documentation of like this time period of this is what we talk about, this is what I know, this is why I founded this company, and this is truth. You can see this within your life. I'm not making any claims. So yeah, people can't look left because of those reasons and everything else that we do that I can get into. Maybe we'll get into even more within this. Like I said, I prefaced this by saying this might be kind of long, this episode of the podcast. So maybe. Now, when you go around in a grocery store, you'll notice people will turn their head to the right, but people can't turn their bodies right. You very rarely see people like pivot, like a 180, like from facing forward to turning around. They almost never do that to their right. They do it toward their left. Because if your right side's dropped and you're kind of looking right, then going left, you're just kind of like falling more to the right, which actually turns you left, if you can understand that. And so to turn right, it's like I'm saying, this right side has to get at least even height with the left, but really kind of higher to kind of pull you back, like the rotator cuff and the muscles that are going to pull your shoulder toward the direction you're going. And that right leg would need to be able to internally rotate to pivot you toward that side. And at the shoelace, it's being tied external. And so it can't even get like internal to go that way. You're already falling toward your right, which again, like I discussed, pushes you actually left. But your head's right, because your body has to compensate with the snaking and twisting of the spine. This is in the Image Clothing Company, man. This is true. This is stuff I found out. Certain people and things online, and just looking into like chiropractics and postural restoration stuff, and a lot of that kind of stuff gave me ideas of these things. But then as far as I found, and still have, I haven't been like trying to find anymore, but like at the beginning I was trying to see, like, does anybody know the actual reason to these things? Because people seem to know that these patternings are pretty universal, and chiropractors will kind of almost know what they're going to do with somebody before they come in, because we all get into a universal patterning. But I haven't actually heard anybody like discuss the reasons why, and it is clothing. There's no dispute, no way you could deny it. It's just, you see it within your own life, within your own body, within the people around you, within your own part of the world on this earth. You can be across the globe from me, and it's happening. So this is in the Image Clothing Company, man. Now, here's the thing. We need to be able to look left because we have two sides of us. We have a spine in the center, the sternum, which is in the bone that's in the front of your rib cage in the center of you. That's in the center, and the nose. Those are the three things I always say, because that is the three things, those are three of the things at least, that are in the actual center of our being. And we have to be able to look left as easy as we can look right, as naturally as we can look right, or else our bodies are imbalanced, and we're just going to be in physical pain because all the organs within there just are going to be sitting imbalanced. Our breathing patterns will be imbalanced. Everything. I could get into anything and everything, but the body just has to work as a whole. That's how it's designed to work. That's the only way that it actually properly operates. Now, looking left, we have to be able to do it. I'm gonna kind of talk about the gospel for a bit right now, and then we might talk more about what I'm saying with mechanical stuff within the body. But within the gospel, we talk about how when we go back to heaven, we're going to sit on the right hand of our Heavenly Father. And we're commanded to look to our Father in everything. Have an eye single to his glory. I'm pretty sure that's how that scripture is worded. If we're going to look to our Father in heaven, however much of it's metaphorical or literal or whatever, it's written for a reason, it's doctrinal for a reason. If we're going to look to our Father and we're on his right, we would have to be looking left. And as I say within In the Image Clothing Company, we are set apart. We are a company founded by disciples of Jesus Christ. Me, the singular founder, I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. Our company is centered on the gospel of Jesus Christ. And looking left is the patterning that people are in, not allowing that to happen. Meaning that's what we're trying to get people to be able to do, is to evenly look left, because they can look right, but they can't look left. Okay? Again, I'm not making claims. You see this in your own life. And it's for the reasons that we say that it is. Okay. So, a lot of gospel stuff, man. Brings me joy. So, anyway. That actually might be just about all I'm going to say within this. I kind of was like, oh, okay, maybe that's what we do for this episode. Doesn't need to be longer than it needs to be, but I wanted to really talk about this. So, yeah, there we go. That is what I'm going to say. I'm going to wrap this up just like that. Cool. Unexpected to me, but okay. It's the 3rd of January, 2025. My name is Evan Strong. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. episode 27 on looking left. Okay, so we will have clothing available made out of 100% natural materials, allowing the body to work, staying centered, fitting correct. If you ever purchase in the Image Clothing Company clothing, do all that you can to purchase it in a size that actually fits, because otherwise you're playing into this exact same patterning. If you purchase it to fit oversized, then it's going to fall to your dominant side, which is going to play into patternings that you don't want to be in. So try to get in your size. Yeah, oversized clothing, dreaded collar seam, shoelaces, drawstrings, zippers interlocking and one side overlapping, which is falling toward the other side that's lower. The jeans stitch in the rear that's stitched so that the right side is smaller and pushed forward. Not only the zipper interlocking, but then like the little fabric flap behind it that we cut out that allows that left side to actually have more room, which is really inhibiting the right side more than anything when that's there. Yeah, just all sorts of things, even socks, because if you're using your right foot in front of the left one more often, just because it's external, and so that's the position it would be in, then you're going to stretch out that sock wider, and then that in itself is going to limit your ability to grip that right arch, playing into the same pattern even further. But then also just being placed within a shoe that's tied incorrect on that side, your foot's just spread more. So all these things don't allow human beings to look left. I said I was going to wrap it up, but maybe not. I also said that this might be a pretty long episode, so I'm just praying through it. Okay. There's so many things. Well, I talk about when it comes to driving, how people will put their left arm up on the wheel. That's essentially just having you look right, if you can understand that. And yeah, playing into just the same thing you're already within with that dreaded collar seam, elevating that right trap or that left trap, because it's most commonly on the left side. So yes. Allowing the body to work. That's our key word. Always at In the Image Clothing Company is allow. We're not giving stretches and exercises on how to get your body to look left as evenly as it can look right. It's like, no, we just got to allow our bodies to have their natural center line that's there, but has just been inhibited for so many years because of these things that, again, are just truth. You can't dispute it. We can't try to get you to believe it, because you can have it be proved by yourself. You can be over in any part of the earth that's entirely on the opposite axis of the globe as where I am, and you can, it's just truth. So, all right. Yeah, it's really cool is what it is. Yeah, because there's scriptures that say you don't want to find yourself on the left hand of God. If you're on the left hand, you're going to be looking right to see him. Yeah. And when Christ got resurrected, he went up and sat on the right hand of God. He would be looking left to look to the Father. We're commanded to look to the Father in everything, in all our decisions, everything. So, yeah. Frank the guitar, man. I mean, I talk about having half-sized guitars is ideal rather than a full-size guitar, which is too big for everybody. I mean, I don't know if there is a human being on Earth, maybe somebody who's like, the number 8 comes to my mind when I say that. Somebody who's 8 foot tall plus, right, might be able to play a full-sized guitar. But yeah, it's the same thing. The farther out your left arm is going, because you're trying to get to the end of that fretboard of the guitar, you're just dropping that right shoulder. And that's going to actually cause you to look left, but not in a way that's actually really looking left, because it's like you're just farther dropping to the right, but then your left arm's out so far that it's kind of like putting your head to the left, but you're not actually doing it. I just don't want to get too like descriptive with trying to explain that. It's just that's what's happening. Again, something that you don't believe me. Don't believe me. Don't believe me on anything. Do not. This is just truth. You can see it for yourself. So, that's sweet, dude. I love this. Yeah. Anyway, so the base of that skull on the right, in the rear, right off to the right of the spine, gets so bound up because that's where that upper right trap inserts, and it's just been so inhibited for so long that it has to be able to be in a more mechanical position to work. Because the body, the reason I say mechanical position, the body's just a mechanical machine. That's why we talk about the skeletal system. I don't address the muscles of the body unless they're just bound up and not allowing the skeletal system to connect and stack and work in the way that it's designed to. So, yeah. We'll get into stuff, but I've already made videos on stuff. I'm not holding anything back within this video, but I don't need to talk about more than I need to within this because it's a lot of just the fact that we can't look left, and then everything that we do here at In The Image Clothing Company is allowing us to just stay centered, and then you can do that. But relating it to the gospel, because everything is metaphoric, everything comes back to the truth of all things, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, yeah, things don't change because our God was here 2,000 years ago. And so it's not like, well, things are different now. It's been 2,025 years since he was born. You know, a lot of people will have that kind of view on stuff or like think that he has changed because time has gone by. It's not the case. And we show those things here, right? In all the ways that we show those things. So, really cool stuff, man. It's really cool. We need to be able to look left. And anyway, with the grocery store stuff, I mean, you'll just see you can start to see the patterning for yourself, no matter who you are, because people will be looking left and reaching down to the left. People will be, I meant to say right, both of those times there. People will be looking to the right, reaching down to the right, but like, there's so much going on within the body that it's not just as simple as saying that. Because there's rotations to the body, then there's hinges to the body, and there's muscles that oppose each other, like that the bicep opposes the tricep, the deltoid opposes the lat, right? The hip flexor opposes the glute medius and hamstring in ways, right? I mean, everything just opposes everything else because that's how, oh, that's so cool. Within the gospel of Jesus Christ, we talk about there being opposition in all things. Let me finish what I was saying there, though. That's how everything has a function. That's how everything has a center line. We can only look left if we can look right. There can only be day if there's night, light if there's dark, warm if there's cold. There is opposition in all things. The human body is no different, but the human body's got a lot of stuff happening within it. Like I'm saying, like even just my arms here, rotations plus flexion this way, and then just flexion at my fingers, not just my wrists, but then at the elbows, but not just the elbows, but also the shoulders, and rotation at both the elbow and then the shoulder. And then, I mean, yeah, like there's rotations, flexion, there's all sorts of stuff happening within the human body, but it's not complicated because it's designed to just work. As I always say, as far as like this is like an indie image clothing company tagline, if you will. There's no reason the body wouldn't work unless there's a reason that it couldn't. And that could be anything. But we know for sure it is the things that we discuss because, again, universal truth. You don't even have to hear about us and you know these things, or at least you've experienced the effects of them, and then once you see it, you're like, oh yeah, see, I get now why this has been this way for X amount of forever within your life, right? Like, so, universal truths, as we always discuss, as we always talk about. We don't care to push opinions. You don't have to believe us about anything we say. Please don't. But it's truth. So, it's so sweet. All right, cool. Yeah, man. Gotta be able to look left. Yeah, because people get so nervous. You'll be like around people, and well, a lot of times you'll see people do the little like shoulder adjustment with their clothing, and that's mostly the dreaded collar seam. But also, I've talked about this before, even if you have evenly sitting shoulder seams, if your foundation, being your feet, is pulled out because they're tied unevenly, then your shoulders won't feel even within an even shirt because your shoulders mechanically are being pulled in an imbalance. So the body works as a whole, yeah, only. But within public, you're around people and they seem to be nervous. Most people aren't as nervous as they're acting. They're physically uncomfortable because of their own situation, not because of you, but because of what they're encapsulated within, the clothing they're wearing. Again, it is clothing. It's so cool. Don't believe us. It's just truth. Now, if you are ever on the left of somebody and so they have to look to you, like if you're sitting in public next to somebody, it doesn't have to be public, but just that way you're around somebody who's more commonly not so comfortable with you, because if you're like within your own house, then you're just around people But if you're in public, sitting somewhere, if you're in a car with somebody, if you're just standing in a conversation talking to somebody and they're on the left of you, they are going to be more comfortable than you. Just as if you are on the left of them, you're going to be more comfortable than them, because whoever is looking right is going to be more comfortable because you can do it easier. And so when you're breathing and you're in a conversation and you say something that you feel like, oh, I don't know, maybe that wasn't quite the right thing to say, and you breathe, and when you breathe, you have to get your shoulders elevated out of the way for your rib cage to expand. And if you're going to elevate your shoulders and there's a dreaded collar seam there and only your left one's going up, and even if that current day you have a dreaded collar seam on the right side, well, it's about the patterning that your body's in. Because if you've been in clothing for years, mostly with it on the left, then your body's in that chronic patterning. And even if this, like I'm saying, with the foundation being twisted, but the shoulder seams being even if your shoes are tied unevenly, you just can't look left if your right foot is being pulled out. Your right foot, because it's on the opposite side of you, has to come in to center your spine so that you can then look left. So, yeah. You can notice that. And, yeah, that's just how it is, man. People, because sometimes conversations can go an entirely different way than they would have, depending on what side of the person you're sitting or standing on. Truth. So, yeah, it's cool stuff, man. Cool because the reason I say it's cool is because we just want to function. We're just here to function. We're here to overcome the world. And you got to be pretty darn intentional to be able to just function the way that you were designed to physically as a human being in 2025 and going forward. It's only going to get more unnatural as we go. Again, all these things are prophesied about. Universal truth. Really. So, yeah, you have to be pretty darn intentional, but then it's easy. As far as you don't have to do things with your body, just the things that are going to interact with your body, you have to be intentional about. So cool, dude. It's so cool. When you're sitting down, almost guaranteed your right knee is in front of your left a little bit. Because even if you're left-handed, even if you're tying your own shoes to the left because you're left-handed, you're still wearing clothing designs that are quote-unquote designed right-handed, right? I mean, the jeans will still be stitched the way that they are. The collar seam will still be placed in the place that it's most commonly placed. Again, there's more than that. I mean, even A coin pocket that's almost always in the right front pocket of pants, that will just cause your right hip flexor to be more contracted and not be able to actually ever fully extend, and that will put you into the exact same patterning. That will cause your left shoulder to be lower, your right lat, your latissimus dorsi to be tighter. It will not allow your right glute medius to activate as much. Your right hip flexor, that's what I started this with, can't extend all the way. Your right foot will dorsiflex less, like I was discussing with the squatting in the grocery store to get to the lower aisle, because in order for that to work properly, your hip flexor has to be able to fully extend, and your glute, especially the glute medius, just because of the way it stabilizes in the rear, connects that upper part of the leg bone, femur is what it's called, to the pelvic crest, that really stabilizes the hip. And if your right leg's not able to get fully locked out because of, in this case, this little example here alone, just that coin pocket on the right, then yeah, then all that's happening. It's affecting your foot, it's affecting the top of your shoulder, well, meaning like, all the way up to your upper trap into the base of your skull, and then your smile is off, and your ears cartilage grows different left to right. Now, if you have more cartilage grown in your right ear because it's been so chronically like expanded like this for so many years, right, the same patterning, then you're not going to be able to look left because you actually have to tuck the jaw back like this to get that trap to elevate, and then you can look left. I love that I'm describing this much of this within this, because we're not holding back things. We're not harboring information until people pay us for something. And no, I mean, we're just discussing truth. And I think the more that I do this, the more that I really discuss the anatomy and things that you can see within your own body, then people will understand quicker that we're just speaking truth. We're not trying to convince anybody of anything. Don't believe me, really. So yeah, it's just sweet, dude. It's really cool. Yeah, I mean, that's just some of the stuff, but your knee also has what's called a screw home mechanism, where toward the very end of its range of motion, the lower leg internally rotates and the upper leg kind of like, I don't know if it necessarily externally rotates up there, but it just locks the knee into place when it gets like to its extension, kind of like that. If this was my right knee, it'd be like, and if that shoe isn't allowing that foot to internally rotate because it's tied external with a right-handed knot on the right foot, then you can't internally rotate the lower right leg. That whole function of the knee can't lock into place, and then that travels up to your hip, travels up to your spine, travels up to your shoulder, your head, out to your hand. The hand is essentially the shoulder, as I always say. Anything that's altered with the hand is altered with the shoulder, but the hand can be entirely altered from the foot. And not just can be, but it will in those cases. In any of these cases, the body only works as a whole. Everything within it alters everything else within it. So, shoot, I'm going to get into depth within this. I'm not sure why, but I just feel I keep getting convicted, like, just say more, okay? Okay, I will. I will. Yeah, I will. It's just crazy because we have to look left. We have to look evenly left as we do right. The jaw stabilizes the entire body. When I was mentioning how you have to get this cartilage in the right ear kind of like broken up after years of overtly expanding, because cartilage doesn't actually grow. It just kind of like gets bigger to fill gaps that are there. I've talked about how like the nose, from looking down to the right, it can kind of extend off to the right, and then it's like not centered, and that's the center of you. Our ears, you have to have enough, you have to have even room within your ears from left to right, because really it's just the gap between the rear of your jaw and your skull. That's pretty much all your ears are. It's just a hole that goes into the eardrum so that you can receive sound waves. And yeah, see, so like this right side, again, if you're listening to this, you can still get pretty much everything that I'm saying just by listening. But if this right side here isn't like a nice even gap with the left and is actually larger on the right, then, well, this right trap can't work, and then you're never going to be able to look left, because this actually has to, like, the right side of your jaw kind of has to come back in order to look left. It's just how it works. Otherwise, things will just kind of bind up in there. Yeah. It's really crazy, man. It's just real. Tension headaches and stuff. If you have those in the Image Clothing Company, right? Any kind of physical stuff within your body, everything that we address will help you. Meaning, it's not going to fix every physical health problem that you could possibly have, but things get amplified on top of other things. I mean, you already have something going on with your body physically, and then you're within some chronic patternings because of what we talk about, then it's just going to amplify what you're experiencing and what you're trying to deal with. And so, yeah. In the Image Clothing Company, universal truths, eternal truths, centered on the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things. It's crazy, man. It's really crazy, man. So, I mean, even the bottom of shoes, though, our shoe soles will get worn to where, I've talked about that before, how people will study wear patterns in the bottom of shoes to try to, address people's walking gait, and that's not going to do anything unless you know why it's happening. If your shoes are laced incorrectly, if they're laced imbalanced, different from left to right, that's just entirely changing the arches within your feet, which are the foundation of your entire body. So it affects things like rotations in your shoulders. And again, everything traveling up all the way to, really your head's not the top. The tips of your fingers would be like the other end of your feet, actually. But, I mean, yeah, both of those things. But, yeah. So, yeah, just all this stuff, man. It's just truth. Just truth. Just universal truth. Universal truth, man. Skepticism. What I'm kind of I don't know how to word this because I don't mean it in a mean way, but I'm almost excited for people to dismiss In the Image Clothing Company for a while. And then down the road, after we get more testimonials of people no, they're just telling us the truth, man. I mean, then people coming on board with it. It's not about believing us, but I mean, just kind of checking out what we talk about so they can learn is all I mean, right? Because, well, let me get a little personal experience-y with that. I mean, there's been a lot of things in my life, within the gospel that I just dismissed and overlooked and tried to think that I knew better about. And then over time, it's shoot, no, it was right all along, and I was just trying to oppose it, or whatever. Well, it really is I mention this all the time, but it's one of those things that could never be mentioned too many times. Within the gospel, it's always the what we call primary school answers, where to have our lives go smoother, it's read your scriptures, say your prayers, go to church, just follow the commandments, and do the very simple things. That's what it always is and always will be, to just allow our lives to go really how they're designed to. And so within In the Image Clothing Company, no exercises, no stretches, no routines, no supplements, but also no opinions. Truth. So it's the simple things. Just be, just wear your clothes correct. And once you've bought the right clothing as far as things that fit you well, or just taken the things you already have and modified them to fit you well, and allowed it to be centered on natural materials, ideally it's 100% natural materials that we wear because the body's natural, then at that point, that's all you do. And you go through your life. I mean, yeah, be intentional about the positions you're doing things in, not sitting at chair heights because that's just not how the body works. Somewhere with a 90-degree bend in the knees and hips, with weight on the hamstrings. Try not to do that when you can, not. And, try not to bend over excessively. And I know that we live in a world where things are like that, but yeah, I mean, you're pretty much done. I mean, just wear your clothing right and then tie your shoes even, go through life, I mean, you'll get out of these patternings. You might have to do some, what I always call one-time releases where, bound up stuff, scar tissue, work it out as far as physically work out the material of the scar tissue or muscle with your hand as like break it up is what I mean. Not do a workout and then you're done. Just don't get into the patterning again, you know. It's just simple, man. It's just simple. It's just truth. It's just easy. So we got to look left though, right? Just evenly. And there we go. Look left as even as you look right, because there's two sides of us, man. Opposition in all things. So, yeah. But yeah, when people are nervous, dude, and you can tell it's like a physical thing, like they show physical signs of being nervous or uncomfortable, it's not you. It's not you that they're being nervous because of or by. It's that what happens is we get so aware of things. When there's people around us, you know, sometimes you feel like you start like just saying things out loud and you like weren't talking before, but now it's like you're almost like explaining your own actions as you're doing them because there's people around you and you're like, oh, okay, you know, or you stand more tense or sit more tense, or you notice your breathing changes or the position of your shoulders change or stuff like that. You know, you get kind of like ready to get a fight or flight type of response, even if there's no danger. And even if yeah, even if you're not actually like worried, it's just like, you know, you're around somebody different. And so what happens is after doing that and any kind of adjustment within your physical body like that, what it'll do is put your awareness more on the positions that are imbalanced within the clothing you're wearing that are on your body. And like if you do something like start to elevate your shoulders a little bit, you know, and then it imbalances your body even more, now you start to like breathe heavier and stuff because you're out of your center line because of an external source, your clothing. Yeah, so it's cool stuff, man. Just gotta be able to look left. Gotta be able to look left. You know, and like I was saying with the jaw stabilizing the entire body, while we breathe, it does that. While we eat, it does that. Everything, you know, the tongue has this like natural, like light suction. Like you hear me do that quite a bit when I talk to the roof of the mouth when it's nice and evenly centered. And anyway, the teeth will mesh unevenly because if you're always looking towards just one side and your jaw's trying to stabilize you, then, you know, you got to get back to center. You got to be able to look left, and you can't look left if your jaw, like if your lower jaw is to the right because of the patterning. Holy cow, I'm in depth with this episode of the podcast. That's what I talk about. I want to address this. I've addressed it, but I want to address it within this episode as well. I talk about how I can't be afraid of people like taking all the information that we have here and like starting up their own company with it and like taking us over. It's not my information to harbor. And the reason we're sharing it, meaning up until this point, it's just been me. As the founder, I'm the only one that's a part of In The Image Clothing Company up until today's date. But I can't be ever worried about sharing too much, giving all our secrets away. There's a song with those lyrics, and I don't want to sing it or reference it without knowing who it's by to give them credit, but that's what it says is, yeah, talking about giving all your secrets away. That song comes to my mind a lot because that's, yeah, I want to give all my quote-unquote secrets away within In The Image Clothing Company because that's the point, is to help everybody across the entirety of the globe with things that apply to everybody across the entirety of the globe. So, yeah, I have the potential to harbor things that I know because then I have like some control over the information, and I don't have control over it. And even if I yeah, it doesn't even, there's no evens. It's just no. That's the reason why we have this. If we never made a dime off of this, we're still just discussing truth to help everybody with, but we're gonna make money off of this just because it's that's what it's for, right? As far as how I'm gonna make my living, I have to continue to be able to pay for what I need, right? My family, when I have my family and things like that. So no, we're definitely gonna make money off of In The Image Clothing Company. I'm not gonna just try all that I can ever do to make it so it's everything that we ever do is free. No. I mean, it's a company after all. But there's both of those sides being the case, right? So yeah. Anytime I'm ever feeling like I'm holding anything back, that's an indication to not. Don't hold back. Just do not hold back. And that's something I pray for all the time, is just, please just don't let anything that I'm doing hold me back from anything in any part of my life. So, yeah. Well, both of my shoulders just popped. All right. Looking left, man. A big thing, I'll mention this. I talked about it, but I'll kind of hit it pretty clear. In order to look left, you have to get that left shoulder to be able to be as low as the right. But really what's happening is you have to be able to get that right shoulder to activate and get at the level of your left. So the right one is really coming up. But if we're looking at it through the lens of the dreaded collar seam, that's why our modification is what it is, because it allows that collar seam that's on the left to drop. And then that will allow that right side, the other side, right, to activate. So even height, right? You're looking in a mirror, you want your shoulders even height. You want your hips even in front to back and rotations, because hips don't really go different heights the way that shoulders can. That's a whole thing. I haven't done a video on that, and I might someday, or it might just be something that we'll just talk about more than having like an actual video about. But there's no such thing as a hip hike. You hear that term, but that can't happen because your hips are entirely connected to your feet, and there's no like give or play within there. So if one of your hips is higher than the other, and it was like still even in all other ways, but just higher, then one of your feet would be off the ground. But it's a rotation because your foot on the right almost always is going out. And so it's rotating your pelvis because it's rotating that entire leg all the way up. And that rotation of the pelvis will then cause your shoulders to be one higher than the other, almost always the left. And in this patterning, it is. But there's also a rotation in the shoulders, but it seems to be more... Yeah, I'm not holding anything back by not further describing that, but it's just, that's the point, is there's no such thing as a hip hike. It's a rotation, because unless one of your feet was actually off of the ground, which can't happen because gravity's still pulling on you, and if there's any weight that's being placed on one foot, then one hip can't be higher unless your legs were like this, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? then yeah, one hip could be, but then it's not higher at that point. It's just shifted over because, yeah. There's a lot, man, that we can talk about. It's really cool. So, yeah. You gotta look left. But what I was getting into is when you're looking into a mirror, try to keep your feet at the even distance front to back, and even angles as far as rotations go, where they're both pointing forward or very slightly in, because that's how an arch grips. And, keep your knees at even extension, keep your hips even front to back and even rotations. That's what I was talking about with the hip hike. It's something that, if you don't understand what's happening, it's a really confusing thing. There is a lot going on within the body. There really is. But it's simple to address because it's designed to just work. So, but yeah. Anyway, shoulders even and look straight, but then jaw even. And that's the goal, I guess, is get everything even, because then you can look left. So, yeah. Man, this is going to be a beautiful episode of the podcast to have documented. Wow. Man. Yeah. You can't lift your